Inshallah, people are trickling in, and in a minute, we can start the discussion. Okay, I think we are all in, and others can trickle in as they come in, so that we don't delay the discussion, because it is a deep topic, as you have witnessed in the past couple weeks. We have started discussing the topic of causes, and it is indeed a topic that is kind of plaguing a lot of us in this age. And inshallah, we'll try to get different viewpoints and insights based on another piece of text from the Risale-i collection, because there are lots of different pieces and parts from the Risale-i that is related to this topic, and it is elaborated with different examples. It is elaborated with different ways to look at things. So inshallah, we'll try to discuss a couple of them, inshallah. And just a quick reminder, I've been going through this slide, I believe, a couple of weeks now. But just to set the discussion and set this stage for the way that we will discuss today as well, is we will read a Quranic commentary called Risale-i. It is a Quranic commentary that is written in this century, in 20th century, which has unique challenges, as you all know, that come with sciences, that come with philosophy, that come with how science is trying to explain the universe, or how the societies are shaped based on secular beliefs. So that is so Risale-i Nur is a text that addresses belief. The emphasis of that text is establishing a belief in God and all the other tenets of belief, um, and that is the emphasis on this, the emphasis that we will keep in this series as well. And in terms of a study method, muzakara or mutala is relatively traditional study method for texts, where we read a text together, and our panelists or the attendees or the participants share their insights. So inshallah, God willing, today our panelists, we have a couple. Baykar Yurdakul is our imam in our Bloomfield Muslim Community Center. Of course, currently he has been stuck on vacation in Turkey, um, which is nice for him, I suppose. But he'll be joining us from there. And Colin Turner, Professor Turner, is joining us from United Kingdom. And as you know, from a few weeks ago, he has presented a webinar on coronavirus, and some of the things that he has said in that series has been related to causes, right? It was a coronavirus as a cause. So I think, inshallah, this topic will be also relevant, maybe a follow-on to that thing, inshallah. And myself, Mustafa Akbulut, I am joining from Boston, Massachusetts. And like the couple last weeks, I'll be moderating and trying to steer the discussion so that we at least end in time. And just again, a reminder about questions. Feel free to send them to me through chat, and I'll try to, um, I'll try to pose the questions to the panelists in the last 10 minutes or so of our of our section. So with that, inshallah, the text that we will read and is from the 33rd word from the book Words and the Risale collection. 33rd word is also called 33 windows. With each window, it is trying to elaborate different aspects in belief in God. And 27th window that we will study, and it's actually we won't have time to study the full thing, which is actually a couple pages long itself, but you know, um, I think it'll take it is deep in that sense. I think one question that we'll try to answer today is, can causes really be responsible for the effects? And that is a couple examples that are given in that text, and we will try to elaborate on those together. One is the human brain as a cause, or anything that is in it, and in terms of an effect, is what we call human memory, and the other thing, and there are also other actual examples like seeds and grains, eggs, things like that within the text we will read. And then again, the other example that is given towards the end that we will read is the example of the sun as something that is seen as life-giving, and but like a small effect like a fly. And as you can see, we are trying to see the connection between the greatest causes and the smallest effects, and to see if there can be really a connection in between them. So this is just to set the stage. If we have time, but I doubt that we will have time for this bonus section. But I think you know if we have time to at least explain this example within the context of this discussion, we probably can. But if not, we will, God willing, go through this or similar topics in the next week, and we will try to cover causes, as a theme, as a recurring theme in this series, because it is indeed something that has been quite a challenge, quite a test for humanity at this time on our belief. Um, so with that, inshallah, I'll start reading. I'll read through this first part, and then we will come back and we will inshallah start. Um, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu khaliqu kulli shay'in wa huwa ala kulli shay'in wakil. God is the creator of all things, and of all things He is the guardian and disposer. This is from Quran. So we look at things which appear to be causes and effects in the universe, and we see that the most elevated cause possesses insufficient power for the most ordinary effect. This means that causes are a veil, and something else makes the effects. To take only a small example out of innumerable creatures, let us consider the faculty of memory, which is situated in the human head in a space as tiny as a mustard seed. We see that it is like a book so comprehensive, indeed like a library, that within it is written without confusion the entire story of a person's life. What cause can be shown for this miracle of power? The gray matter of the brain? The simple unconscious particles of its cells? The winds of chance and coincidence? But such a miracle of art can only be the work of an all-wise maker, who, in order to inform man that all the actions he has performed have been recorded and will be recalled at the time of accounting, writes out a small ledger from the great book of man's deeds to be published at the resurrection, and gives it to the hand of his mind. Thus, since they are comparable to man's faculty of memory, make an analogy with eggs, seeds, and grains, and then compare other effects to these small and comprehensive miracles. Because whichever effect and work of art you look at, it contains such wonderful art that not only its common, simple cause, but if all causes were together, they would declare their impotence before it. For example, suppose the sun, which is imagined to be a large cause, possessed will and consciousness. If it is asked, "Are you able to make a fly?" Of course, it would reply, "Thanks to my Creator's bounty, there is plenty of light, heat, and colors in my shop. But such things in the fly's being as eyes, ears, and life are neither in my shop, nor are they within my power." So, inshallah, this is the text that we will first start. And inshallah, I'll reread this part, because I think also, and our panelists would probably agree, is that in Risale-i Nur, probably a common theme is that the first sentence or the first phrases is almost like a summary statement of the rest of the text. So inshallah, we will stop after reading this once more, and inshallah I'll take insights again inshallah after this verse. Allah khaliq kulli shay'in wa huwa ala kulli shay'in wakil. God is the creator of all things, and of all things he is the guardian and disposer. This is the verse from the Quran. And then we say, we look at things which appear to be causes and effects in the universe, and we see that the most elevated cause possesses insufficient power for the most ordinary effect. This means that causes are a veil and something else makes the effects. So this is the text, inshallah. So maybe we will start with Brother Colin, like your thoughts on this part, and maybe of course, again, welcome to the panel after a few weeks of break.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I have to apologize, first of all, for not being prepared for tonight's talk. We had only a couple of days of prior warning, which is fine. But since causality is not really my area of expertise, actually, I don't have any areas of expertise, but causality certainly isn't one of them, although I have obviously dealt with it in the context of my studies of Risale. I think before we get into the topic proper, I think that the verse at the top of the reading is very apposite. The chosen verse is very apposite because the divine name Al-Wakil reflects the fact that divine power is something to which all acts, all human acts included, are entrusted. A wakil is a trustee, among other translations. It's a person who is entrusted to perform a particular act. And I guess actually it takes half a lifetime to understand that it is the creator who actually creates those acts which we are all brought up to believe are ours, by right, by disposition, as part of our created nature. And so Al-Wakil, we usually invoke Al-Wakil only in connection with those extraordinary situations where we feel that we're unable to affect something or to bring about a desired outcome. And we then take our case to the trustee, to the wakil, and we ask him to do it for us. Ya wakil, help me to do this because I'm unable. Ya wakil, heal my sick friend or my sick father. Ya wakil, because it is it's beyond my capability. Let this affair end well, Ya wakil, because no one but you can make it right, and so on and so forth. So I think that we are very selective in the way that we use Al-Wakil, the name. We tend to invoke the creator by this name only for those situations which are outside of our sphere of competence. But I think, as the dars that we're studying will show us, the notion that we actually have a sphere of competence is a complete fiction. And if we think back to, I don't know whether you are familiar with the French philosopher Malebranche, who also believed that causes do not create. He's one of the Western proponents of something called occasionalism. He famously said, "You cannot move your arm." And I think this is something that we'll go back to as we progress through the lesson. The processes required for your arm to move are so many, so numerous, so convoluted, so complex, that only someone with an infinite amount of knowledge could possibly lay claim to the ability needed for a human arm to move. You'd have to have the knowledge of how your neurons and synapses in your brain are configured, the connection between the brain to the muscles, the mechanics of your musculoskeletal system, all of which are present before their creator as one thing. Now, no one without that knowledge could actually lay claim to the ability to put that knowledge into effect, into action. So Malebranche said, you cannot lift your arm. And yet, here we are lifting our arms freely, and usually we find no obstacle to it. It seems as though we don't even have to think of it, except, of course, that we do think of it. There is that undiscernible millisecond of want, that elusive instant in which our desire to act is logged and recorded, registered, and then after that the action takes place. And it takes place apparently in accordance with our own desire, and therefore we think as a direct result of our own will. And so that is why we think that we are the creators of our own actions. Because 99 times out of 100, that little instance of willing, that irada, which we know is there, even though we can't identify it, 99 times out of 100, that act of irada is followed by the action that we are willing. So in the case of lifting our arm, we want to lift our arm and we lift it. Now that gap between willing and acting is so slight, so imperceptible, that it's no wonder that we attribute the action to ourselves. And we grow up thinking that most of what we do, we actually do ourselves. And therefore, it's only those extraordinary acts which are beyond our ability or capacity, as they say, above our pay grade, it's only those acts which we need to place in the hands of the trustee, the wakil. So we're very selective about how we invoke al-wakil, when in fact, it is al-wakil that is responsible for all acts, whether they're voluntary or involuntary, whether apparently they're inside our sphere of competence or outside it. And what I noticed, first of all, was the choice of verse for this study of causes. It is very relevant. It's very apposite. And I thought it's an excellent way of starting to understand the lesson.
Yeah, thank you. It is indeed, right, like the mentioning of, and of all things, he is the guardian or disposer and al-wakil. Not only things that you cannot do, right? Like creator of all things and guardian and disposer, the wakil of all things. So almost like whatever he created, he also is the one who is sustaining and being the wakil for all of them. Indeed, very interesting. Um, Brother Baikar, any insights onto this verse or this statement that comes after it about the greatest of causes and leading to the most ordinary effect? And any insights onto that, or we can start discussing the example that he gives after this.
Assalamu alaikum. Happy
Alaikum
to
salam.
be with you again. Thank you for the summary. Brother Colin just reminded us first week's discussions, and the ayah, I guess, was the same ayah that we discussed the very first week. And yes, it's very relevant. The word wakil, we usually say, as he said, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. But even though we are not in a very critical situation, in the ayah, it expresses that we are in need of that name at any second, at every stage of our lives. And I want to repeat the first sentence. This is kind of, to me, an interpretation of that ayah. We look at things which appear to be causes and effects first, and we see that the most elevated cause possesses insufficient power for the most ordinary effect. The most elevated, the biggest, the supreme cause, whatever we think about, whatever we trust most, whatever we credit most in our it. When we look into it, it has insufficient power to create anything. So when I first read this sentence, I said, oops, what's going on here? Because this was contrary to what I learned until certain age, what I have observed in my life until certain age. So to me, this was really uh, destroying my biases or a wake up call or something really opposing my general ideas. Because as we discussed, again, inshallah, this will be a remembering of the last week. Since we were born and we have our conscience, we start learning everything in the cause and effect relation. We got the fruit from the tree, we got the vegetables from the soil, and we got the rain from clouds, and so everything is attached to cause and effect relation. So when we apply the causes, we got the effect. So this sentence is really, you know, destroying all my faith or belief or my set of, approach to the life. So how can I handle it? First of all, I need to digest this sentence before everything else. This kind of a statement opposing all my life system. So for the first slide, I guess thinking about this, pondering upon this meaning is very important. So this is not just a philosophical statement, but depending on the verse that we just read, uh, this interpretation is very valid. But again, uh, it's a real wake up call, or it's a real challenge to our general approach to our lives. Even though we define ourselves as a believer, but we know a lot of traditions or a lot of believers, for example, saying that, oh, okay, God created the universe, but now, he set up things, laws and regulations, and they're running by itself. Or again, related to the verse, I'm taking care of my life. Certain things I'm capable of doing. I'm able to do this, and then at certain point when I'm stuck or when I'm, not capable of doing that, I'm just praying to God, or I'm just asking from the al wakil to take care of it. I trust to him. So this statement is clearly uh, opens our minds to do the fundamentals of the our faith, chronic faith, that introduces Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us as al-wakil. So
Indeed. Yeah.
every single thing is dependent on him, on his knowledge, on his power, on his will. So we trust everything to him. So
Mm.
inshallah, step by step, we will try to understand this
Yeah,
statement.
inshallah. Indeed, it is interesting that like the challenge that is presented here, right? The challenge that is posed is quite a challenge to our mindset that we developed using our secular educations or science backgrounds, right? Like as a scientist myself, I had trouble for many years trying to trying to accept or trying to internalize this, and this is quite a challenge in the sense that the most elevated of the causes has insufficient power for the most ordinary effect. So it is entirely like cuts the relationship between the causes and effects altogether. And it is quite a challenge that we'll inshallah need to understand and internalize, and it takes time, and in my experience it took time. So but let's go through the example, one of the examples, and we can discuss details of that. And if you want to present more examples that is close to this topic, feel free to do them. Let me read this part, inshallah. This is giving an example of that is the biggest cause and the smallest effect type of a thing. So I'll read this, and inshallah we can share our insights on this. So, to take only a small example out of innumerable creatures, let us consider the faculty of memory, in our mind, which is situated in the human head in a space as tiny as a mustard seed. We see that it is like a book so comprehensive, indeed like a library, that within it is written without confusion the entire story of a person's life. What cause can be shown for this miracle of power? The gray matter of the brain, the simple unconscious particles of its cells, the winds of chance and coincidence? And I, I'll read this too because it is related to the previous example, and I'll go back to that slide. But such a miracle of art, the memory, can only be the work of an all-wise maker, Al-Hakim, who, in order to inform man that all the actions he has performed have been recorded and will be recalled at the time of accounting, writes out a small ledger from the great book of man's deeds to be published at the resurrection, and gives it to the hand of his mind. Again, I think this part is also explaining the wisdom behind having a memory for humans. But when we look at this example, human brain, of course, we don't need to be scientists to analyze this, right? It is, I think, a human insight, or the human intuition, because it is a human occurring. That's why, and Professor Turner told us that he is not an expert in cause and effect relationship, but I guess like anything in the Risale-i, it is, I guess, explaining, giving examples from our experiences, the human experience. So with that, how should we understand this example? Maybe to elaborate this example, any insights on this specific example, Dr. Turner?
Before you talk about the actual
Uh-huh.
example,
Sure.
a question poses itself
Mm-hmm.
from the words that Ustad uses here.
Mm-hmm.
If I can find the text on the screen, um, we look at things which appear to be causes and effects in the universe, and we see
Oh,
that the most elevated cause possesses insufficient power for the most ordinary effect.
yeah.
I've jotted that down elsewhere. That's right? Yeah.
Yes. This
Uh,
goes like the
this
opening
means that
sentence.
causes are a veil and something else makes the effect. My question is, but Brother Baikar was saying that for him it was a bit of a shock. It was a bit of a wake-up call. And you said, as a scientist yourself, it took you some time to internalize this.
Sure.
This makes me think that although Ustad says we see that the most elevated cause possesses insufficient power, my question is, but do we see it? And if we see it, how do we see it? Is it something that we see only after we've had our causal worldview overthrown, that wake-up call,
Mm-hmm.
by our acceptance of the divine names and the fact that they are ubiquitous and all pervasive? Once we come to believe that Allah's names are absolute, it's only then, when we realize that divine activity and creativity leaves no room for others to intervene or to interfere, that is when we begin to question the efficacy of causes, is it not? Because if
Mm-hmm.
we were left to ourselves, and if we were not, how should I say it, impelled to follow the Quranic lead and question our own roles as human agents in affairs. In other words, if we hadn't been prompted or spoon-fed by the revelation, would anyone seriously come to the conclusion that causality is only apparent? I don't mean causal inefficacy in the sense that Hume meant it, David Hume, because he simply denied the necessity of the causal chain. Maybe it is possible, without prompting from revelation, to arrive at the conclusion that the ties between cause and effect are not necessary in the philosophical sense of the word. But would one, this is a question from me, would one ever be able, without the prompting of revelation, to come to the conclusion that we as beings with apparent agency are not really the creators of our own actions? The idea to me seems so preposterous at first glance that it is extremely difficult, even for believers, who've been believing for years, even for them to accept it, it's hard. So what is Ustad saying when he says we see? Does he mean once we have learned, we see? Or does he mean we see from the outset? Because I don't think that we do.
Yeah, indeed. I agree. I mean, there are lots of, I guess, veils or the blocking things before our eyes that really, although once we learn, as you said, right, once we are led and steered by the revelation to see, I think it is clear, crystal clear, and it becomes preposterous to think otherwise. But when we, before that, as you said, there are certain things that just blocks our way towards seeing things clearly, and it is indeed quite a point.
But do you think, or does Brother Baikar think that this could be something which we would, if we were in the right kind of life circumstances or situations, be able to arrive at on our own steam, so to speak?
Brother Baikar, would you like to take that?
In a way, I agree with Brother Colin, and yes, the role or the effect of the revelation on our journey dealing with this cause and effect relation system is indeed big. However, I also believe that if we really, as we are going to read in the following examples, as if we can change our way of looking into things, way of handling things in our lives, it could be possible to look through the causes and see the effect in different way, because whatever revelation tells us, still we believe in a way that we experience things. So to start again, we'll give examples from our own experiences. So as human beings, even though we intellectually think over the things and discuss things and try to come to a conclusion, still we depend more on our own experiences. So at least the abilities we think that we own can tell us a lot. In a way, I believe that I can do certain things, I have certain abilities, but if I really look through them, these are not mine. I don't have a real control over them. They're kind of means or devices given to me to just survive or go through my life. But in reality, I believe we can really experience that this is kind of a trust to us. This is not a real thing that's coming from our own existence.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think that at the beginning we have to believe that we are the creators of our own actions, because as you know from reading Anna Risale-i, if you are not able to make that comparison between your creativity and divine creativity, then you can never come to know divine creativity. So at the beginning, it's imperative that we actually don't see that causes are not creating their effects. We have to, in effect, see causes creating effects in order to be able to. It's a kind of shirk which is necessary at the beginning, in a sense. And I think that when Ustad says that we see the most elevated cause possesses insufficient power for the most ordinary effect, I think we have to understand that this realization is one which comes as a result of the data that we acquire from revelation. And on a personal level, it was from Ustad's Ana Risale-i together with Tabiat Risale-i, which first prompted me to think about the issue of Khalq al-Af'al, the creation of actions. And even people who work on Muslim theology and who are totally familiar with the debates on Khalq al-Af'al have admitted to me that, even though they understand the theological discourse on the subject, they themselves have considerable difficulty accepting the conclusion, which is namely that we don't create anything. And I think this is the beauty of revelation. Revelation is there to wake us up, to shock us, and to impel us to undergo a kind of mental revolution.
Indeed. Yeah. Yes, great points, and it is indeed. I guess it appears through this discussion to me that in order to is understanding the cause and effect relationship in the way Quran describes is one thing, but at the end of the day, it is an experience each person needs to go through by understanding his being, his self, ego, ana, his, calling and evaluating that, as well as evaluating other things, other, I guess, so-called creators like the nature or the causes or the other, things that are, like as you mentioned, like the Risale in the Risale, or is, I guess, addressing one part of that inner journey that we need to take almost to understand these. And also Tabiat Risales in the treatise on nature, and again, addresses that part, like some inner, I guess, journey, some inner thinking, reflection, and some outer reflection looks like it is needed to internalize. And maybe that's why it took, for example, for myself in that time, because it needed for me to maybe read through the whole Risale collection maybe a few times in order to get this part also, nailed down correctly,
I
because
think,
it's
yeah,
yeah.
I think what Brother Baikar alluded to quite beautifully was the fact that once we have arrived at the truth in revelation, then we have to go back to creation and we have to reread the creation in the light of revelation.
Mm.
So first, when I was saying that it's very, very difficult when you're growing up to be able to see that causes are not creating, if you are not familiar with revelation, of course, because we are supposed to make the links between cause and effect in order to own our own acts, because it's only by owning our own acts that we can then disown them. But when we've reached the revelation and we get the data from revelation, as Brother Baikar said, we have to go back and we have to experience the creation through the spectacles of revelation. And then we reread it, and then we see what Ustad is saying. We do see that the most elevated cause possesses insufficient power for the most ordinary effect.
Indeed. Yeah, Indeed, it is quite striking. There's a comment from a reader, a participant. I'll mention them because it is related to our topic, and then we can, quickly discuss this example, any takeaways from this example, and then, inshallah, we can think about the other example. And that comment was, eh, or actually we can pose it as a question as well, that for the common mindset, or the majority of people, are we not really deep thinkers? Is that why we cannot really realize this? But I guess you can allude to it by saying that, by, by reading the Quran or the revelation, and then going back, maybe that is the thing that gives us that mindset. Or is it still the case that it is hard for a common person to go this deep, even with when they are when they encounter the revelation?
No, I think I'm a common person. I don't have any scientific background, and I don't think particularly profoundly. But once I'm told, look at the creation and bear in mind that every single atom and particle in creation is impotent and needs something else for itself to be able to exist, then you realize that if X, if you say atom X is in need, how can something atom X be able to create atom Y, which is equally in need? And Ostad, he sort of paints this picture quite simply by using everyday metaphors, everyday allegories, and everyday imagery. And he says it's impossible for impotent, deaf, dumb, and blind causes to be able to lift loads which are thousands of times greater than themselves, unless it is by the power and the omniscience and the omnipotence of an all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-powerful creator. And anyone can understand this, I think. If I can understand it, believe me, anyone can understand it.
Yeah, great, thank you. So about this example, I would like to come back to this example, and in this example, I think it is also related in the sense that you discussed atoms, and everything being in need, because like this example of human memory. So human memory, as we understand from science, is on the brain. It's like collection of neurons making connections to each other, and as there are more connections, they get um, they start keeping information in them somehow, and then that is seen as by science. When you go to open up a textbook, that is explanation of memory. But I think there is something deeper than this, right? I mean, um, it is not like the explanation here is almost not like, well, God created the neurons and neurons gave the memory. It's not even that. It's like the faculty of memory, the concept of memory, and how neurons can even provide that. Like using, I mean, is it like, because like, is it God still employing these causes here so that to make this happen, or is it like God even doesn't need that but has put them in? Because last week we had discussed this, the some wisdoms behind having causes, and it was like, for his glory, to protect his grandeur and glory, God has installed or instituted these causes, but he does not really need them. And there was that example of human king needing his officials as his partners, pretty much in execution of his will. But God does not really need that. In this example, maybe given that, how should we understand that connection? Like the brain, I mean, there is some visible connection of brain and memory, because if someone has a damaged brain, we see that that person can lose memory. So there's some connection, looks like, because the absence leads to absence of brain, or right, or loss of function of brain leads to loss of memory. So there's some connection, but how should we understand this in a way that brain not being really responsible for memory? Maybe I don't know. Maybe I can start with Brother Baikar, and then um, we can come back to Dr. Turner.
It's a beautiful reminder to me, or in a way, it's given me a method to look into my own life and the experiences I'm having the everyday experiences I'm going through. So yes, the science can help us at certain level, but again, he's talking to our own experiences. This is very familiar to us. This is what we are going through. This is our life. This is talking about me. So just to use science as a tool, if I want to record all my life story from my birth until now, I think I'm gonna need a storage device bigger than this room. Just I'm talking about a HD quality, a visual recording. But as you said, in this example, we can see a lot of dimensions of preserving the hopes, the protection of our identity, our lives. For example, I come home 5 years later, I open the door, enter the house, and I smell, oh, mom cooked this. Or I hear my friend Ahmed on the phone 10 years later, oh, Ahmed, is that you? So I can understand that even my feeling, I was so angry, I was so happy, I was so amazed, etc., etc. Every single detail from the very first minute of my life until now is recorded, is preserved, is protected. Just right, like maybe I can't remember everything right now, but I have as a small example, I have my driver license. When you put it in the computer, you can come out with all my records. So that small ledger, that small driver license, tells you that all my driving record is protected in the state's computer. Just like that, that small ledger, small part in my brain tells me that I'm not alone. I'm under consideration. Somebody is looking after me very carefully. So, and if it was me, I I'm gonna willing to forget most of them maybe, and I'm gonna just want to remember some of them. But it's not in my hands. I have no ability to just even make a choice. This is just beyond my ability. I'm not consciously, aware of what's going on. But this is the whole experience I'm going through. And even though I'm not aware how it happened, I know that this happened. This is a amazing miracle just happening in front of me, and I'm going through this in everyday life. And just think about it. Who can just who will want to just preserve all your life for you? If you want to do it, just again, just an HD quality video, maybe you're gonna pay a lot of money, for somebody to just run after you and record you all the time. So this single example is, it gives me a real method to look into each and every action I'm going through in everyday's life. It's very interesting to me. It's an amazing example to start with.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. Jazakallah. It's, great. The example, right? Um, the life, our experiences and the magnitude of the end results is so much that, like, even like thinking right from a technology point of view, we are trying to establish certain things. We are trying to like mimic like things about like memory and stuff. Again, maybe thousands and millions of people working on it, and trying to improve it. There are still issues, and ascribing all that even more, and something like a perfectly working machine to mindless causes is really uh, not reasonable. Um, so I guess you also touched upon, Brother Baikar, the point that comes here about like the wisdom behind having a memory as well, I suppose, right? So that we can um, relate that to the bigger book of deeds that is really kept, it being as a sign. You gave the example of a driver's license, pointing to something bigger, a record that is kept at the state. And I guess this page about like the wisdom behind having a memory is really also striking. Inshallah. Um, I'll also, because we are in our last 7 minutes or so, and um, in that sense, I'll also read the example about sun, and then I'll give just a few minutes to each of you, inshallah, to wrap up, either about these examples, um, or in general the takeaways out of these examples, inshallah. I'll read this part, which Brother Black alluded to first. But such a miracle of art, memory, can only be the work of an all-wise maker who, in order to inform man that all the actions he has performed have been recorded and will be recalled at the time of accounting, writes out a small ledger from the great book of man's deeds to be published at the resurrection and gives it to the hand of his mind. Thus, since they are comparable to man's faculty of memory, make an analogy with eggs, seeds, and grains, and then compare other effects to these small and comprehensive miracles. Because whichever effect and work of art you look at, it contains such wonderful art that not only its common simple cause, but if all causes were together, they would declare their impotence before it. For example, suppose the sun, which is imagined to be a large cause, possessed will and consciousness. If sun possessed will and consciousness, if it is asked, "Are you able to make a fly?" Of course, it would reply, "Thanks to my Creator's bounty, there's plenty of light, heat, and colors in my shop. But such things in the fly's being as eyes, ears, and life are neither in my shop, nor are they in my nor are they within my power." So, given this, inshallah, I'll give it to Brother Colin, inshallah, to share his insights, because and then we have like what, 5 minutes left, inshallah, maybe in 3 to 4 minutes, and then I'll ask Brother Baikar to wrap it out. Dr. Turner?
Going online still? Yes.
You might be muted. Dr. Turner, we cannot hear you if you're speaking. You're muted, I guess. Okay. Did we just lose him? Okay, maybe I'll go to you, Brother Baikar, until we fix Dr. Turner's connection. These. Oh, he's here. But
Sorry, I
although
lost connection.
okay, thank you. So yeah, I just read through the rest of this part, and we only have a few minutes, anyways. Maybe to gather up your insights on this, and again, inshallah, we'll continue this theme in the coming weeks. But to maybe conclude this part on your end. Would you like to share your insights of these both examples and also causes and effects and their relationship as we see?
Yeah, because I have to go very quickly as well.
Yeah,
I think we've only started to scratch the surface of this, obviously. There's so much that we haven't discussed because of the time constraint. But the example of memory, we have to realize that things are created for a purpose which transcends the obvious. So memory is created with a divine purpose, with a divine wise purpose, and that is to show us that preservation is possible, that Allah can preserve everything from the tiniest, most seemingly insignificant occurrence to the most momentous. Everything is recorded and everything can be preserved. As the evolution of cinematography and the evolution of sound recording shows, we can record more and more on less and less material. So I think we have to look beyond the obvious and try to see what Ustad is telling us. And with his example of memory, I think he's telling us that everything is preserved and will be played back to us at the day of resurrection. So that's all really I have to say on the subject. And I'd just like to thank everyone for the opportunity that I've had to be with you today, and hopefully in the future we can unpick this issue of causality much more in much greater depth.
indeed. Thank you very much for your participation, Dr. Turner. It's really great. And actually, your insights, there was a comment from one of the participants about like maybe some of these causes can be guides for humanity to work, to the working towards betterment of our lives. And you gave the nice example like cinematography and stuff, so that like maybe these things are also showing us that there is a path. If we can mimic and continue and work, we can maybe achieve that. But thank you very much for your comment. Any final insights? If not, maybe dua from you, Brother Baikar?
Thank you, brother Colin. It was a good point saying that this was just a start. I guess this is a lifetime adventure that we need to work through. Uh, since everything is attached to causes, and the popular approach to life is just about the causes. Everyday life we're discussing about, oh, because of such and such and such, this and this and this, this happened. So it's a lifetime adventure to find the causer of causes. Even centuries ago in the munajat, in the supplication of our Prophet, he supplicates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a name of Musabbib al-Asbab. So he is the causer of causes. So it will take time to really digest that all the causes are mere means, mere tools that just, or veils that cover, that helps us in a way. It's not necessarily a block to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to understand, to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names and with his attributes in a better way. Maybe if it was not for the causes, we will not be able to understand all his names and attributes. For example, today in the first example, we talked about Hafiz, the protector, the preserver, and we also talk about our memories, our feelings, are, very secret things at the bottom of our hearts is preserved. So he should be all merciful, he should be all caring, etc., etc., etc. Goes on and on. So causes can help us to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a better way, but we should be approaching them in a way with the glasses, with the tools that the revelation gives us. Otherwise, unfortunately, they could be a great, uh, you know, block or uh, challenge for us to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or approach Him or be a servant to Him.
Haj. Thank you very much for both of our speakers, and shall we say Amin to your duas. Um, inshallah. Again, inshallah, in the next week, and maybe as the speakers said, right? We have just scratched the surface of the topic on causes, and inshallah, we'll try to keep it going in the future. And with that, inshallah, I would like to end. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم من الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة. Thank you all for joining, and I'll see you next week.